Hi, I'm Frank Fry from publicspace.net, and today I'm going to show you how to set priorities with the ABCDE method. I think we all have way too many things in our lives that are vying for our attention, and many more to-dos than we can ever hope to actually get done. Yet, very few of us can accept that we simply won't get around to doing all of them. Most of the time we take no deliberate decision on what we are going to do today, or even right now, and instead just react to whatever pops into our heads first, or whatever the last person we talked to wanted from us. Obviously this isn't a great way of doing things, and we often spend our days doing busy work rather than pursuing our long-term goals. Then when we look back at what we've achieved this week, this month, this year, even these past years, we find that we are no closer to reaching any of our big goals. The key to changing that is to become more conscious of the choices that we make and finding a balance between things that are urgent and things that are actually important to us in the long term. This is, of course, where setting priorities comes into play. The important thing here is not to slavishly stick to one method, but to learn how to make deliberate choices while keeping a reasonable set of guiding principles in mind. And here we could do a lot worse than using the ABCDE method. I discovered this method a long time ago when I read Brian Tracy's Eat That Frog book, nearly a decade ago. I remember not being very impressed with the book at the time, but I was reading everything I could find about overcoming procrastination, because at that time I was working on version 1 of my vitamin R Pomodoro timer for the Macintosh. I'm a very keen highlighter when I read, because determining which passages are especially important helps me process information more deeply, and I do occasionally go back to my notes and highlights to refresh what I've learned. So when I was recently on a flight to the UK, I took out my Kindle edition of Eat That Frog, and while the book hadn't left much of an impression at the time, I found that I was actually using almost all of the techniques that it describes in my everyday life. The ABCDE method in particular encodes a lot of best practice that I'd recommend to anybody who wants to boost their productivity. And that's why I thought it would be useful to do a video about it. The rating scheme from A to E itself is not very interesting, but the advice on how to assign a task to each one incorporates a lot of useful points. So even though I don't use this method just as described, there's a lot of thought-provoking ideas in it that you can apply to your own to-do list. So you start by writing down your tasks, ideally on a piece of paper or in an app, and then you start assigning letters to each one. The first category is the A category, which is for tasks that you absolutely need to do and there's just no way around them. It's not an A task if there's no serious negative consequence of not doing it, or a significant benefit from doing it. If you get fired if you don't do it, if your marriage is finished if you don't do it, if you become homeless if you don't do it, it's an A task, so write an A in front of it. If you have multiple A tasks, choose the most important one and make it A1, then A2, etc. It's with the B tasks that things become more interesting. They are tasks that you should do, but that only have mild positive or negative consequences. An example might be catching up with your email. C tasks are nice to haves. They have no significant consequences on your work life at all. They are things like phoning a friend, going for coffee with colleagues, etc. D tasks are tasks that you can delegate. E tasks are tasks that you can actually eliminate altogether because they won't make a real difference anyway. They may have made sense at some stage of your life, but things have changed and perhaps you just continue doing them out of habit. Or maybe they were never really that important. The point is you can eliminate them and thus make more time for more important tasks. Once you've finished assigning priorities, you should start with your A1 tasks, no matter whether you feel like it or not. That's what the title of the book refers to. If eating a frog is the worst thing you'll do all day, well, you might as well get it over with and then you can enjoy the rest of your day. You should never start B tasks before you've run out of A tasks. This in particular jives very well with a technique that I use myself every day. I have a most important project that I set for a while, so often up to 9 months. And every day the first thing I'll do, before looking at my email and before doing anything else at all really, is to spend 20 minutes on that project. Having gotten started on it, I then read my customer email, do my bookkeeping, open my mail, etc. But this first stint of working on something truly important to me ensures that I make at least a little progress on it every day, and it keeps this task at the front of my mind. That means that I tend to automatically gravitate back to it as soon as I've got a moment. They may eventually become A tasks because you've left them so long that now they do have serious consequences. For instance, a C task like getting in touch with your old friend may eventually become a B task and then graduate on to becoming an A task, because you risk losing that friendship if you don't do something about it. But many of those tasks tend to disappear on their own. Perhaps your friend will call you, perhaps you'll run into them somewhere. One inevitable consequence of setting priorities is that you won't get around to doing most of your C tasks, ever. This is something that you need to get comfortable with. You won't get everything done. Some things will fall by the wayside, and that's okay. And if it isn't okay, it's going to have to be, because there's just too much stuff to be done. The benefit of setting clear priorities is that the stuff that you don't get done isn't the important stuff. That's much better and much less common than the more usual scenario, where you get all the unimportant stuff done, but you never get around to reaching your big goals in life. Of course, this technique, like any other technique, has a lot of limitations, and applying it in practice is much harder than it sounds on paper. Have you got somebody to whom you can just delegate the D tasks? You might have a personal assistant, but pushing your work over to your colleagues won't make you popular. Conversely, refusing to let co-workers push work onto you isn't going to be easy either. Saying no to new tasks may be the hardest, as well as the most important thing you can do if you want to reach your own goals. Also, it's obvious that if you make Write the Great American Novel your A1 task, you'll never get around to A2, never mind any B or C tasks. So the principles that I describe in my Vitamin R app apply here too. Decompose larger tasks into smaller chunks of 10 to 20 minutes each. Set clear, actionable and reachable objectives. Concentrate fully on one task at a time, to the exclusion of all others. Take short recovery breaks so that you can maintain a reasonable cruising speed. The main takeaway from this video is that you have to think deliberately about which tasks you need to do first. Thinking about the consequences of doing or not doing the task provides a good framework for assessing the priority of the task. Get comfortable with the fact that you won't complete all your to-dos. Look for opportunities to delegate. Learn to say no. Start with the most important task before getting bogged down by less important ones. Concentrate on one thing at a time. I hope you found this to be useful. Please subscribe for more productivity-related content. Leave a comment if you're interested in a video about a particular topic. And if you're on the Mac, please check out my Vitamin R app. Thanks for watching.